Oh, audio. Can you guys hear me now?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can actually. That's great.
It wasn't turned on.
Oh, si-
The
silly thing
the
not
real
working when it's
basic
not
stuff.
turned on. Oh well. Uh,
Hey.
hey, raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens.
So we're gonna start from the top, all right?
Yeah, these are a few of our favorite things
This is
about OCD. Welcome, everybody.
welcome to Purely OCD. We are going to be talking about our favorite things, quote unquote favorite, meaning the tricks that OCD plays that are a pain in the rear
In the
reindeer.
tuchus.
Yeah.
The rear reindeer. Wonder who's in the back of the pack. We always hear about Rudolph being up front, but you never know. So,
Oh, thank God for you. I needed that. Santa's in the
well,
back.
of course. So if you have questions related to OCD, we're going to try to stick with one topic that we'll be deciding today as we go. But if you have questions, throw them in the little question mark situation in the lower right hand corner, and hopefully we'll get around to answering some.
Yeah, and this week we're hoping to talk a little bit about mental rumination, as it is uh, a not so favorite experience.
It is a not not so favorite experience of
Very
OCD.
unsavory experience.
Yeah.
Um, so welcome. And also, this is not a replacement for therapy. This is for educational purposes only,
That
folks.
is so true. Thank you for reminding everybody.
Hmm.
And with all of that said, yeah, should we talk about the ye old mental compulsions?
Man, let's just get into it. So,
And
can
these
we
are
hit?
saved, by the way. We have all of these are saved on our Instagram lives. We have a YouTube channel, and we're actually, just side note, available on podcast apps too now.
eh,
So
Like
we've got
iTunes.
like iTunes,
What?
I don't even know what else. The Google of iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever. You know what I mean.
Yeah, Spotify. Are we on Spotify?
That, yes, Spotify is one
Yeah,
of
that's right.
them. Wow, we're really good
Podbean.
at this. Podbean.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
so do we want to stick with rumination, or do we want to talk about all of the fun mental compulsions that
Yeah, let's
smattering of them?
sure. Could everyone just put like a little heart if you all have experienced mental rumination or mental compulsions, aka the same thing?
Yes. Yep.
I'm
That would
just so
be.
curious.
Yeah,
Our
I
podcast is called Purely OCD.
that is right.
Yeah.
And yeah, because that's one of it, I have to say, it's my OCD loves ruminating. It's like its favorite thing, like its
Oh,
legitimate favorite thing to do. Oh
yes.
yeah, we're getting
Lots of.
lots of hearts.
See, you're not alone, guys. You're not alone.
You're so not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, thousands of hearts.
Yep.
Me too.
Exponential infinity.
Infinity hearts.
So, yeah. So, do we want to start with the misnomer of purely OCD?
Oh yeah, because
Or
it's
pure O, I mean, not purely OCD, pure O.
well, but that's where the purely OCD title came from. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the idea of puro and yeah, why don't you take the lead, girl? Do it.
So, Dr. Stephen Phillipson coined the term pure O, or pure obsessional OCD. So, meaning people were being seen clinically presenting with OCD, but not necessarily these very physical compulsions you might typically see, like hand washing, counting, checking, things like that. But what was going on was a lot of mental compulsions that people don't observably see. So there are compulsions involved. They're just not very overt and obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So
Well said.
it's a great tool in identifying and really helping people feel validated in that their OCD might be different than somebody else's, and it helps us give language to things to talk about it clinically and such. But at the end of the day, OCD is OCD, and everyone's compulsions just look different.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, even though it's termed pure obsessional, even Stephen Phillipson would say, I
He
think,
would, and he
that
has, yeah.
yeah, it's just a way of like it's a shortcut, and it's a way that people do understand. That said, as we talk about this, we have to unpack the fact that it's not all obsessional, and how do we determine what's obsession and what's mental compulsion?
Right.
And I think the short answer to that, obviously, it's probably going to be a lot of what we talk about. But the short answer is that anything that we're trying to figure something out, anytime we're trying to figure something out,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably compulsion. If we have a thought pop in that we can't control, like just one that comes on up and it's like, oh, hey,
Hey.
that's hello.
You're not busy today, are you?
You didn't have
good.
anything.
Because for the next 8 hours, we're going to really try to solve whether or not, this is really a real universe and not an alternate one.
Yeah. Or we're going to try and solve the mystery of your sexual orientation. You're welcome.
Yeah. Go enjoy your day. I'll be here in your mind.
Yeah. Which that's the thing though. So the thought pops in, but then it's your call as to whether or not you go with it, whether or not you then now it will pop up throughout the day, like the next 8 hours, right? Whether you like it or not, probably. But whether or not you then spend a bunch of time looping over it for the next 8 hours and trying to figure it out, or just noticing it every time it pops in, like, hey, buddy, glad you're still alive. Thank you. Thanks for checking in. Great. Good job. Yeah. That's,
Right.
that's the choice. And there's so much freedom in that choice.
Yeah. But it's just convincing someone to let go of it.
Convincing somebody to let go of rumination.
Yeah.
Because it seems
so
risky.
And
what was
important.
The word? Important. Totally.
Yeah, like you're turning your back on it it's like the truth is just 10 minutes of rumination away.
It's always
I know it sounds
right
absurd.
there.
Yeah, it sounds absurd talking out loud, but I think that it's fair to say that anyone listening to this or watching this knows exactly what the heck I'm talking about.
Oh, well, I certainly do. I can't speak for everyone else, but
right.
But I think that part of it too is that obviously problem solving is something that most people are rewarded for.
Yes.
Right?
And
What were you going to say?
I was going to say we should probably bring up generalized anxiety too. And this huge spectrum, right? Like the typical mind, this generalized anxiety, OCD, right? It's everyone ruminates.
Yep.
To varying degrees.
So true. In fact, I would say they call the compulsion element in generalized anxiety usually, like in the diagnosis of it, worrying, like the act of worrying, but it's rumination. It's worrying. Yeah, exactly.
As if there's any amount of worrying that's not excessive.
Yeah.
Like you don't really need to do that for anything.
No. Worry is not helpful. Problem solving, yes.
Yes.
I do a fair amount of problem solving because, it's necessary. Life has a lot of, I don't know, roadblocks to navigate. But
I like that you spun that in such a kind way. Life has lots of problems, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. There are lots of
lots of
problems.
non-problems, but also I just feel like being negative Nelly today.
No,
not
I like
Kelly.
It. What?
Not You're Kelly, but Nelly.
Oh my gosh, that's your alter ego.
Mm-hmm.
How have I never put that together before?
I actually have no idea. I just came up with it. But anyways.
That's awesome.
Do you want to talk a little bit about defining what problems, since you're on here, and I think it's really important for most people to know, defining what problem solving is versus rumination and worry.
I would love to do that. Thanks for the
Cool.
invitation.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of problem solving, it's usually geared toward actionable steps, right? It's looking at the issue so that we can figure out what we want to do next and how we want to approach the issue, whatever it might be. Um, and so that action piece, like it's formulating a plan of action moving forward. Generally, it's time limited, and that's, I think, a really important point in differentiating between the two, because as anyone here who's gotten caught in rumination knows,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's not time limited. That's it's infinity, right? You can do it forever. Um, so, in terms of mental compulsions, rumination, active worry, whatever we're talking about in that realm, it it usually is something where you're going over and over the same information that you've already been over before.
Right.
And there's usually not an answer to be found,
No.
right? Like there's no, and oftentimes, I think this is true with a lot of subtypes of OCD, most of them, in fact, that you, there's no answer to the questions that are being posed. Just
Yeah.
great. Am I in the right relationship? Am I actually living in reality? What if I'm actually bisexual and not gay? As a few examples. What if these thoughts mean that I might want to harm somebody someday? Like, there's no, like, how do you figure out the answer to those questions? Well,
Right.
you don't. There's
Yeah.
no answer. Yeah.
Even if we're looking at generalized anxiety stuff, is like, will, like, does my child have COVID? Because schools basically send your child home with one symptom and you have to
Right.
go get tested to bring them back. Um, I'm not worried about it anymore because it's constantly happening,
Yeah.
but that seems like a reasonable worry to be like, oh, what if this? And then my worry thought's more like, what if she has to be home for the next 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no big
But
deal. Just could you like work and live your life and then also take care of a child? And there, of course, there's going to be anxiety about
right.
that coming to pass. That would be a challenge.
Well, it seems rational that someone would be like, oh, yeah, that's definitely something that's worth worrying about, right? Because it's like this
Mm.
real life thing that's happening. But I would argue that this is not helpful. Problem solving is that I need to get her tested and I have to send that back, and I can allow the feelings of fear to be there and anticipation and my brain to be like, okay, who do we have to reschedule and squish into this time period, and who do we have to call? And but
Yeah,
that's useless because she could come back negative, which she has thus far. So
right.
just saying, there's no
The
amount of worry.
the helpful question is a really important one
Yeah,
that
right.
you just brought up. Is this helpful?
Yeah, it's not.
Right. No.
It's not helping me get to my goal, which is to find out whether or not she has it so I can send her back. It's
Hmm.
not.
Well, and to continue on with all of the other stuff in your life that you need to do. Like it's
Right?
not helping with anything. In fact, quite the contrary. That's maybe the saddest thing about it. It's interfering with your ability to move forward.
It is. Yeah, it sure is. And be present.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So basically, what OCD does, it's like, listen, let's spend a whole bunch of, nor generalized anxiety, listen, let's spend a bunch of time trying to figure out something. Um, you'll always be like a moment away, like a breath away from the answer. And in the meantime, you're going to ignore all of the things that actually probably do need your attention because you're
Right.
so busy trying to figure out this thing that has no answer.
Mm-hmm. Like, why are you feeling sad? I don't
Oh,
know, Brain.
no.
Yeah. Nope, we don't go
Oh,
there.
we don't go there. I don't know.
Why am I anxious? Not today.
Maybe it's because I'm relapsing. Cool. Thanks.
Right? This
Awesome.
feeling's never going to go away. Fun.
Fun. Fantastic. Well,
Going
I
back to
guess
typing.
because it's winter. That's a good answer. Why am I sad? Because it's winter. By the way, if anyone has questions, throw them in the little question mark bubble to the lower right, and hopefully we'll get to some stage.
Yeah, you let me know when we should do it.
Well, no, I saw questions coming through and I want to make sure we didn't miss them.
Oh, yes.
Um, so we've been talking a lot about this sort of general term of rumination, which maybe we want to talk a little bit more about what that means. But also like some of the other manifestations, like we already talked about worrying. So like the active weighing back and forth, like, will this happen? Won't it happen? How do I know? But maybe like breaking down some of the different categories would be helpful.
Of rumination.
Well, and of just different mental compulsions. Like, for instance, you might mentally check. You might count. You might pray. You might,
Review the past and compare to the future or vice versa.
yeah,
Um,
try to rehearse.
Try to
Yeah.
rehearse. You may just overanalyze every single thing that just triggered you and to try to figure out why it happened,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to find meaning in it somehow. That's true for all of it. But
No, and I think actually I love the term mental analysis because I think that sometimes it's even clearer than the idea of rumination, right? It's maybe better understood.
right.
So hats off to that. Yeah, because it is. It's just like, I'm going to sit here with a magnifying glass. I'm going to stare at all of this until I can figure it out.
Right. And I know we've had this conversation not that long ago where I was like, rumination is by definition somebody who eats their food, chews it, swallows it, and then spits it back up. And then we were cracking up because it's like,
Disgusting.
but that's what we're doing, mentally ruminating. We are chewing the same content, swallowing it, and then going, no, I don't think so. I think I want
Not,
to keep thinking about it. I want to keep chewing on it.
yep,
Little longer, little longer.
that's it. That's where chew the cud comes from, right? And
Mm.
I actually just posted about this not very long ago. About
I
the
saw.
real,
It's
yeah.
good. Very good. I was like, oh, I know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Those cows and their multiple
Hmm.
stomachs. Let's just keep throwing it up and see what happens. So yeah, don't do that. That's a bad plan. Just saying. And I did see something go by about somebody who lost a pet recently. I'm so sorry for your loss. I think the thing about rumination that's important to talk about is that it's often a symptom of depression as well. Not saying that that's what this person is going through, but it can be linked to sadness just as much as it can be linked to anxiety.
Yeah, and I think it's totally normal to grieve the loss, right? But we don't want to sit there and go, okay, at what point is it interfering with my daily functioning, right? And to say, I'll leave space for grieving and sadness. And that's true for all feelings. But at some point, it becomes interfering. And then we say, okay, is this feeling getting me closer to my goal?
Yeah.
And looking at it in that analytical way, in a light analysis.
No, light analysis light. That's funny.
Uh-huh.
Uh yeah. No, you're so right about that. That how much we want to let the feelings dictate whether or not we're spending long periods of time sort of again chewing on the same information and reflecting and comparing versus being present. And that doesn't mean that it won't hit you. Grief
Right.
hits us all the time. But it's about saying, oh, yeah, I'm sad. Let me feel sadness instead of trying to resolve the sadness by reviewing it in your mind over and over again, which it doesn't resolve anything,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
Right.
Mm.
So I was going to say something about this mental rumination and um,
So we're talking about
different types.
analysis. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Comparing the past.
Emotional checking. I said mental checking, like which I think of more as like reviewing a moment where you've like checked the light to try to remember. Like, do I remember turning the light
Oh,
off?
yeah. Do I remember opening the pills? Did
Yeah.
I?
Yeah. Do I remember it being on my tongue? Yeah, same thing. Versus emotional checking where it's like, oh, well,
How do I
how
feel?
do I feel right now? Do I feel depressed right now? Do I feel
Right.
sad right now? Do I feel anxious right now?
Am I aroused right now?
Exactly.
The good old groins,
The groins,
the groinals.
the groinals.
Um, Checking, your vision too. Could be like, oh, did I just see something? I'm
Oh
looking for
yeah.
floaters or hallucinations. Like, did I just hear something?
Hmm. For
Let me
people
see
who
if I
have
can.
obsessions related to mental health and whether or not, what if I'm psychotic or what if I become psychotic?
Yep. Or the benign ones too. But yeah, that's the one I was
Yeah.
thinking of.
Well, and you mentioned the floaters, which I think, yeah, that's more of the
Yeah.
benign potentially, or that could veer into health anxiety or OCD related to health, right? Where it's like,
Yay.
why am I seeing things in my vision? Does it mean that there's something wrong with my vision? I should probably think more about that.
Right. Let me check my heartburn. Do I have heartburn? Oh my gosh, I'm having a heart attack. Go into physical symptoms.
Wow, we went there fast. Thanks, brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to, yeah, clarify about this idea about OCD and hallucinations. We're saying that some people have obsessions primarily about whether or not they might have some form of mental illness that is not OCD. So, for example, they might like one of the primary worries that we see is psychosis. What if I'm psychotic? What if I'm delusional? What if I'm seeing things? Um, and then sometimes people will have concerns about being having bipolar disorder, having borderline personality disorder. Those are, I think, the
Yeah.
key ones.
Bipolar and schizophrenia or psychotic.
Oh, and depression, because then that dovetails beautifully into the realm of self-harm.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Oh, it's the Venn diagram.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be an exciting one to try and.
Oh, yeah. It's just beautiful marriage of all of them.
Yeah.
Um, so what we're asking you to do is to say, and every cell in your body is like, oh, we got to figure this out. This is really important because this could mean your fill in the blank, your identity, your uh, current state of your life, your partner choice, your mental health, your physical health. And we're saying, so don't do that. And that's a tall order. I mean, that's
It
really
is.
hard to do.
And it's not without, we're not saying spend no time thinking about it.
Mm-mm.
We're not saying that it doesn't make sense to briefly reflect on, okay, is there anything to this? Or is this just the random thing that popped into my brain today? And if there are no strong facts that would suggest you spend a lot of more time on it, then we're saying, at a certain point, it doesn't make sense to keep going with it. That's just going to detract from your life.
Right.
And it's going to make you more dependent on that behavior. So now every time that you're worried or every time that you feel fear, you're going to be dependent on ruminating, analyzing, fill in the blank, right? Which sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. It's hard.
It is
Um,
hard. It is hard.
do you want me to go through some of the questions? Because I think some of them actually bleed into this.
Yeah, let's do it. And by the way, as you're looking through the questions, since you brought up the this is hard question, if that's something that comes up a lot in treatment, and it may be something that Kelly and I discuss in future episodes, or maybe even this one. Who knows? Um, But Drew Linsalata and I actually talked about this recently, how to navigate the sort of common refrain of, but it's hard, because that can sometimes interfere with treatment too.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
So this person said, what should the ultimate goal in treatment be? Thought stopping, managing the thoughts. So, right, thoughts.
Thought stopping is not a good plan.
No, it's a compulsion. It's saying don't do this. Like we're avoiding it by doing that. And we're saying no, we want to allow the worry thought to be there, right? The worry thought is, what if I'm not actually attracted to men? Okay. So we're not saying don't think that. We're just saying let the thought be there, but we're not going to answer it. We're not going to analyze it. We're not going to try to figure it out. We're just going to say there's the thought, has these feelings, acknowledge it exists, drop the mental rumination, proceed with life.
Proceed. and
It
let and
seems
let
so easy, but it's not.
It does seem easy because it's a simple thing, just not easy. The thing is, it's sort of like leaving the question floating in the air, right? Like if you can imagine just it just being there. Like, oh, I'm not going to touch it. I don't need to do anything about it. It's just that's part of what it means to look out of my eyeballs right now, and it's going to be there in the sky.
With my brain through my eyes.
Yes.
I remember the first time when I did learn about mindfulness, and one of the first things that you learn is like thought noting, like noting your thoughts, right?
Hmm.
I had so much anxiety, shocking. I know, most shocking thing ever,
That's weird.
about noting my thoughts because I was like, oh, there's one, and there's this one, and there's that, and then
And am I doing it
okay,
right?
well, it was just constant. Yes, but for me it was, and when I had my last big flare of OCD, it was like I gotta catch every single one as if they're super important. I
Yeah.
don't know why I'm sharing that, but it just made me think about how even noting a thought can be very complex.
Yeah. 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 No, and I think that sort of that's down to like if I want to catch them all because I want to make sure that I'm doing this in a way that stops them, basically.
Right.
Right? Isn't that generally what drives that? I know it has been for me. Like I got to get them all.
Totally.
Um,
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. Absolutely.
and then there's also in my own experience, I will say, oh, well, am I using the right labels to note my thoughts? Because
Ooh, that's a
there's
good
like
one.
there's judging and thinking and questioning and right what there are some labels that some meditation teachers will have you do. I'm like, well, which are the right ones? And should I be noting them like this or should I be noting them like that? Right? Like the same sort of
Yeah.
wanting to do it right.
Well, actually, this reminds me of the good story where we went to I don't know, maybe we shouldn't get into this,
Oh,
but
do you want to talk about Youngie?
yeah, yes,
Youngie Mingyur Rinpoche. We went to see him and Sam Harris talk in LA
yes,
years ago. Yeah.
yeah, very
And
good.
was there anything specific about Youngie? He's
So,
a monk, by the way.
and he has panic,
He
and
was.
he's so precious. I don't know what
He
it is
really
about him.
is. Well, he's really
He was
sweet and unassuming.
he is, and he was saying how no matter what he tried to do to try to get rid of his panic, it was just constant. He's like, I run uphill, panic follow. I come downhill, panic follow. And then he finally comes to this conclusion. It's like, I have to welcome panic. I have to
Yeah.
let panic in and share tea with panic. And that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about, which, sometimes you have to do all these safety behaviors to try to get rid of it and hit rock bottom before you're like, all right, you know what? I'm going to do it the way like all these people, these experts are saying I have to do it. So see what happens.
I guess I'll try this. It's so true. If you haven't tried the other way for a time, at least with some topic,
Yeah,
you're probably not going to be motivated
right.
to stop because it does kind of work temporarily sometimes but
Yeah,
then it comes back and it gets worse. So it's not worth it. But you kind of have to learn that on your own.
you do.
I
You
did
do.
anyway.
I think most people do. Yeah. Okay.
All
So
right.
hopefully we answered that person's question. Um, Give me a second. And we're trying to pick stuff that's on topic. So if we don't get to yours, it's nothing personal. It's just for sake of listening for folks looking at the topic. We want it to be applicable.
So as Kelly's looking, I wonder if anyone relates to any of the specific types of mental compulsions that we've mentioned thus far, and want to sort of throw them in the thread again, so that people uh, know that they're not alone in this. So yeah, I don't know, might be a kind of a fun experiment.
Okay. So this person's asking, okay, so I noticed the thought. Then do I purposely redirect to something totally random? Such a good question.
Mm-hmm. It is a good question. I would shall I?
Yes, please.
Okay. Um, my initial inclination is that it doesn't need to be something totally random. If we're redirecting toward anything, like almost grasping to try and put our attention somewhere else, the I would be suspect of some potential for uh, sort of sneaky thought stopping, trying not to think about it, which is not the idea. The idea is redirecting towards something that matters to you more than rumination. So that might be a TV show, which somebody might think is random, but it's more important to me to relax and enjoy my television show than it is to try to figure out whether or not I'm living in an alternate reality. So thank you, brain. I'm back to the TV show. And then you're watching the TV show for like 20 seconds. And then all of a sudden there's this other invitation to come back and figure it out. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, back to the TV show and so on and so forth. But you can do it with anything. And most things are going to be more important to you than trying to figure out something with certainty that you can't figure out.
Except it's going to be really hard,
Yes.
challenging, but you are capable of doing it. You just have to be willing to experience that hot shot of anxiety.
Right to the amygdala, right there. Pow.
Straight to the
Straight
to
shot.
the old brain gonads.
Right there.
I don't even know what I'm talking about. But yeah, and initially it's going to be very challenging in thinking like, okay, it's just going to come back in a couple minutes. It might come back in a couple seconds. Like it's going to be
Yeah.
you building a muscle, and that's just going to take time. But that doesn't mean it's not helpful and it's not working. It's just practice.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and I think it would be helpful for people watching to maybe hear a little bit about this that's related to this question, and what we're talking about. It is that this is why it's potentially problematic to like withdraw from work for a time, or
Hmm.
withdraw from school for a time, which a lot of people think, okay, I'm gonna stop working, I'm gonna stop school, and I'm just gonna focus on my treatment, which
Right.
sounds good in theory. However, if if you leave a vacuum there where there once was
Oh,
a
power
focus,
vacuum.
it is. It's like it'll suck you right in. Did you like that sound effect? I hope that
Yeah, that
was
was really good.
wow.
That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that not having something that matters to you that's meaningful and purposeful for you to do generally doesn't support recovery. That's not to say there are some instances in which, and if you're seeing a therapist and that's the route that you're taking, you know, far be it from me. It's, not, this is, again, it's not therapy, not trying to give direct advice here. It's just that's part of the thinking process around this is, well, does it make sense for me to sit in my room all day and try and
Focus on treatment.
focus on treatment? Maybe going out and having a treatment focus in terms of how you respond to things. But hanging out with
And
your
that,
friends.
right, and that might be required depending on the severity of the OCD, but it's not the long-term plan, and we're not waiting for things to get better before we get into our life. We have to just get into it
Yeah.
with being still having intrusive thoughts, with still being inundated with them, because you are going to have to learn to make coffee with intrusive thoughts, drive to work with intrusive thoughts, talk to colleagues with intrusive thoughts. So that is the stuff that a treatment provider cannot help you through. You have to do it on your own. And I
Hmm.
think if you're in treatment and doing it, that would be far better for you.
Hmm. Agreed.
But plus all the stuff you said, of course, but just
Well,
we'll add on.
I know. I like it. I like all
Okay,
your add-ons and your initials.
cool, cool.
Hmm.
Uh,
I did see somebody put some mental compulsions that were among their favorites in the chat. I don't know, more than one person may have done that because I don't necessarily always see things flying by. But
I'll share them while I'm looking.
yeah, let's see if I can find them. They were, no, I can't. Now I can't scroll back through.
Oh,
It's
that's okay.
whatever. Uh, but yeah, I think it's important to recognize that you can have more than one, and you can use them interchangeably. It's not like you have to make a choice and stick with it.
Um,
Mm.
so this is a therapist asking, with ERP, should the goal be complete lack of compulsions or is reduction okay? So I think we would both say that there's no possible way that somebody is going to be totally free of compulsions. Um, that's just not possible. It's natural. Just like we were talking about, like the average person is going to ruminate, and that's true for the average person, which is somebody who has OCD. And I personally think that there's a lot of behavior that gets pathologized in OCD treatment. So if you are not a treatment provider who treats OCD and maybe doesn't have OCD, and I'm not saying that that is this case, and I'm not saying that's generally, but oftentimes people will be like, "Oh, well, that's a compulsion. That's a compulsion." It's like, not everything's a compulsion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Not everything is a compulsion. Like sometimes we need assurance because we're just human, right?
Right.
So that's just, it's tricky, I guess.
Yes, I totally agree. And Kelly and I have both been sort of stigmatized in moments in our lives, in various moments in our lives, and sort of said when people say to you, "Oh, well, you're being kind of compulsive." It's like,
Yeah,
okay,
you're
well,
weaponizing my OCD now,
yeah,
actually. So
yeah. So
I'll
back
remember
off,
that.
Barbie. Um, you knock it off. Don't weaponize my OCD. Okay? Thanks.
Okay. And
Thanks.
this is not related to the question, by the way.
No. Oh, no. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jenny. No, this is
Yeah.
not about you. I just mean
Jenny,
in
you're awesome.
general. You're
Yeah.
amazing. Look, you're
Hmm.
treating OCD. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that it's as somebody who historically has gotten into obsessing about compulsing and trying to eradicate compulsions entirely, because I think that all or none piece, it's where trying to avoid compulsions becomes a compulsion. God,
Yep.
I get this disorder. So,
Yeah.
but
Inception, just like
yeah,
folding. Yeah.
folding in on itself.
Yeah.
So
Collapsing.
I think that if generally speaking, having sort of a more free flowing attitude with it all. Like, yeah, sometimes I'm going to get caught, and that's okay, especially with mental compulsions, because more often than not, you're going to catch them after they've started. And so if the goal is complete lack of compulsions, then you're going to see that as a failure versus, oh no, this is totally normal. This is, I don't have complete control over my mind, and I'm not hyper vigilant of it because I don't want to miss my life by just staring at my brain all the time. So I
Right.
think,
And
yeah.
then that's it, right? Is like that it's not just other people, it's ourselves that is pathologizing compulsive behavior. And it's like, well, but you're human and that's okay. You can compulse now and then because you're human.
Hmm. Sometimes you're going to not realize it until afterward, like, ooh, that was a compulsion. That was definitely, that was, okay, cool.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
well.
And self-compassion, right? Also honest inventory of yourself, right? Is like you know when
Hmm.
you have gone down the other side of the road.
Yeah.
We got to get back on the highway.
Come
So
back. Come
come
back.
back.
Yeah.
Not on the nearest off ramp. Come back.
Yep.
Okay. We have a lot of questions. Should we
Oh,
take
we do?
maybe
Maybe one more?
one more because I do have to get
The asset?
the asset. Yes. Um,
But thank you for that question. That's awesome that, to see people out there using exposure and response prevention to treat OCD.
oh, really quick, someone said, how do you know if ruminating is part of OCD? We know it is because the behaviors that are done in rumination or the mental acrobats that go on, aka rumination or mental analysis, is trying to actually directly solve for or get rid of, neutralize that obsessive behavior, hence compulsion. So
Yes,
it's cycling.
definitely. And you, if you aren't clear as to whether or not for you ruminate, like let's say you're experiencing rumination, but you're not sure, and you don't have a therapist, go get assessed, right? Because it can, I think, recognizing, in case this is what she was talking about, or he, I don't know. Why did I just decide your gender? I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that I think going to get assessed by a professional in the context of therapy is important if you're not quite clear, um, because it could be several things in theory.
Right. Okay. Lots of good questions, you guys. It's hard to not.
Yeah,
And there's a lot more too. Does it save the questions?
it doesn't. But the good
Oh,
news is
that's
we're here every week, guys. So we're going to be talking about some other favorite thing that we have. In fact, we could take suggestions.
yeah, exactly. Um, so this person asks, how should I deal with the thought of I can't figure this out and I'm a horrible person?
Hmm. That's interesting because it kind of reminds me of a conversation that I had
We
with Kelly,
just,
but just this morning.
yeah,
Yeah,
is
I don't.
saying the content is somehow like it's your fault somehow that you're having these thoughts. It's like you didn't wake up and you're like, oh, you know what? I would really like to start having thoughts about being a pedophile because that sounds wonderful.
Right.
No, this is
No.
just you have OCD. It just
Right.
happened. You didn't want it.
No.
So be kind and
Above
as
all,
hard above all.
be kind. Yeah. Yeah, I think that this idea that your inability to figure this out, sort of generally, like one's inability to figure something out is an indication of how good they are as a person or not. It's just they're not connected. There are plenty of things we can't figure out anyway at all. And that's not about being a bad person or even being not a smart person. It's just there's a lot of uncertainty out there, you know?
Right, and isn't the second part of this statement undermining the entire point of maybe, maybe not, which is I can't figure this out. I'm not going to, right? And I'm a horrible person. But then you're just agreeing with the thought to be true.
That's such a good point that you're basically saying that I have figured out this thought and therefore I am a horrible person.
Yeah, you
Because
actually are
if
undermining the entire thing.
if you couldn't figure it out, then would that actually make you a horrible person? Right? I guess it depends on how the question is
True.
intended, but
True.
or how the statement is, the I can't figure this out. Like, I'm a horrible person because I'm incapable of figuring this out, or I'm a horrible person because I have this thought in the first place. Um,
True. Right.
yeah.
But calling yourself a horrible person, typically, just generally, we
Big picture.
don't,
No.
therapists will say it's not a good idea to
No.
call yourself a horrible person. Never seen that work out too well.
No,
Um,
no, it's not a good one. And it's very all or none too. And it's sort of when you look at talking to kids, for instance, you don't say good girl, bad girl, or whatever. You say, I don't like your actions right now.
right. The
So,
choices you've made.
right. This idea that people are either like inherently good or inherently bad, it feels really stifling for people. And that's actually, in some ways, it's kind of a cop out, because if you're inherently bad, then, well, there's nothing that you can do about it, versus recognizing, no, I'm not inherently good or bad. I'm just a person, and am I cool with the action that I just took? Emphasis on
Right.
action, because the thoughts aren't a reason to be a good or a bad person. Just saying.
Right. The action of choosing to not engage and figure it out can make you feel like that, but that doesn't mean it's true.
Right. You might have a thought that you're
Thank you. Yeah.
bad because you're not responding to the thought.
Hmm. There you go.
Brains.
Brains. And I'll end on that, but I have to share something about this. It's totally relevant. Is that last week in PE, my daughter's school, they had to do a few things, and then I think they were supposed to tell them whether they've been naughty or nice, and blah 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 blah. But my daughter said to them, "Mommy, I didn't answer. I told them I'm trying my best." I was like, "There, I'm so proud of you."
Hashtag therapist kid. That's
Yeah,
so good.
they're like, we know whose kid that is.
Yeah, that definitely belongs to Kelly. That's
Yeah,
so good. I love that. She says
yeah.
those things sometimes, makes my
She
heart happy.
does. I
Yeah.
know. She really does.
Yeah.
It's sinking in. I
Yep.
can't wait to meet her future therapist, though. I
Aw.
promise I'll behave.
Well,
Okay.
thank you all for joining us. We hope you
Thank
will
you all.
come back next week. If we didn't get to your questions, we're happy to hopefully get to tackle them at some point on a future episode.
Yes. Thank you, friend.
Thank
I
you,
will see
friend.
you on the flip side.
You sure will. Bye.
Bye.